Attendees and guests, please take your seats. Our program will begin momentarily. Please take this opportunity to silence all communication devices. Thank you for your cooperation.
In some ways, it feels like as Americans, we've never been further apart. What were once shared challenges have come to feel like vessels for polarization and hate. People are having a harder time seeing evidence of our greatness in our government. They're looking for some sign that there is still an us left in the U.S. Those people need look no further than the spaces and faces between these walls. When mayors meet, ideas and ideals become implementation and impacts. Impacts that shape city streets and build bridges to reveal the good that's still within all of us. And to prove that, blue or red, when mayors lead, our best days are still ahead. Welcome to the 91st Winter Meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C.
Please welcome Miami Mayor and the President of the United States Conference of Mayors, Francis Suarez.
I can see there's still no room service. That's good. It's working marvelously. As Secretary of State Blinken acknowledged that it was a great strategy. Hello and welcome to the official opening luncheon of the United States Conference of Mayors 91st Winter Meeting. Before we get started, appreciate that. Thank you. There's always one person really paying attention in the audience. Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge our wonderful business council. We thank our active corporate members for the many successful joint ventures we share, and we look forward to an exciting future of endeavors together. The U.S. Conference of Mayors continues to strengthen our presence in the international business arena and will continue to increase international business opportunities for our member mayors and for other mayors and cities across the globe. We value the Council for all of their hard work and patience over the years, especially during COVID-19, and we look forward to a future of further opportunities. I want to thank all of the sponsors of our 91st Winter Meeting. Of course, our title sponsor, the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Thank you. We love staying at your hotels. Airbnb, the American Beverage Association, the American Institute of Architects, Americans for the Arts, Axon, Broadband Money, Crown Castle, you can clap for yourself, Flock Safety, Grubhub, HDR, IKE Smart City, Live Nation, Starbucks, hey Starbucks, I like Starbucks. We gotta get you a Cuban coffee brand, buddy. We gotta get that going. All right, Target, where's Target? Target, as we call it in Miami. Uber Technology, Verizon Communication, the Walton Family Foundation, Wastewater Scan, and Wells Fargo. Again, thank you to our... Wells is in the house. Good stuff. All right, again, thank you to our Business Council and our sponsors. Now, please welcome the CEO and Executive Director of the United States Conference of Mayors, Mr. Tom Cochran.
It was 91 years ago. I wasn't there. It was 91 years ago that the mayors of this nation were sitting somewhere in a damn hotel in Chicago, attending something called the American Municipal Association. They had the dog catchers there, they had the councilmen were there, everybody was there. 17 million people were on the streets in the greatest depression we've ever had. Veterans were selling apples. People were lined up begging for bread. They were hungry. And the mayors looked around, just like you guys do today, and said, what the hell are we going to do about this? So they all came to Detroit City. They all came to Detroit City under the great leadership of the mayor, Frank Murphy, and they formed this United States Conference of Mayors. Then they came to see President Hoover and said, if you don't do something, there's going to be a problem. And on the eve of the inauguration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 3 blocks from here in the Mayflower Hotel, they formed this United States Conference of Mayors. And so they worked with the president to bring this country back from the Great Depression. Today, 91 years later, we look at what we've just went through, the greatest pandemic since 1918. The mayors of this nation stood up with our frontline workers. You were there, and we are back. And for the last 18 months, what we've done with the Congress and the White House is a record proportion. $300 million was all they talked about in the Great Depression, coming straight to you. That's chicken feed. That's chicken feed with what we've done. In 18 months, we have passed $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, $65.1 billion coming straight to you, coming to all of you. You know, the CARES Act cut you off at $500,000. We got that straightened out. So money's coming straight to you. $280 billion in chips and science. And as the mayor of Columbus says, it'll make the Midwest the new Silicon Valley. And $370 billion of the Anti-Inflation Act, which includes record spending for climate reduction, climate protection, and energy. We did it with a new president, Joe Biden. You know, he was elected. Indeed, he was elected. We did it with him. We did it with a woman from Baltimore, the mayor's daughter, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, the daughter of a mayor, and her brother, Tommy D'Alessandro, was very active with us. We did it with Senator Schumer, and we did it with many Republicans who came across the aisle to work with us. So we have a new Congress. We just say, you know, act like mayors. Act like us. Act in a bipartisan way to implement these programs that we just passed. But to be there for you, to play defense, and I'm a Georgia Bulldog, I know how to play it. Sorry. To be there to play defense, to make sure that we are at the watchman at the gate, as President Kennedy used to say. Mayor Suarez has appointed Piscataway Mayor Brian Waller to head up a Legislative Action Standing Committee. Let me just say this. We will not entertain one iota or thought by those in Congress who dare to even mention the clawback of these funds. There's something they say in Texas. They say, don't mess with Texas. There's something I say in Washington, D.C., don't mess with mayors. Because we know if they do, we will come after you. Because we want this to continue to be the greatest democracy on earth. And we do it all because of you and what you do at the local level. We welcome all our new mayors here today. And to make us stronger, we have been very fortunate to recruit Nan Whaley, the former president of this organization, to chair up our membership. And we're so pleased that Mayor Ginther, our vice president, is bringing the membership into a new task force. We must have new recruits. We must have new enlistments to continue the army of advocacy that we do for the Congress. We thank Mayor Suarez so much for appointing Mayor Sheevy to head up our task force on mental health. Yesterday's sessions were some of the best, and we appreciate her leadership. The last thing I wanted to mention, Mayor Bruce Harrell of Seattle is heading up our new Technology and Innovations Task Force and watch that committee join with it. Now, Francis S. Suarez, your 81st president, he's unstoppable. And he raises the flag and makes us proud throughout these United States and throughout the world. We're so pleased, we're so appreciative of his leadership. We thank his wife, Gloria. And we're so pleased that those precious children, Andrew and Gloriana, are with us at this meeting. So let's look at the video. Roll the video, and let's see what we have been doing in the film.
A lot has happened since we met in Reno, and our mayors have a lot to be proud of.
I can present today here at the summit that we now have over 150 mayors that have signed on to the Mayor's Compact to combat hate and extremism.
Hey everyone, this is the second U.S. Conference of Mayors funded trip that we are taking, that I'm taking now to the Sarasota Northport area. U.S. Conference of Mayors has graciously agreed to pay for it.
With the new mayors in our ranks, the future of American cities looks brighter than ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Conference of Mayors, Francis Suarez.
Love that pregnant pause. I think I've gotten faster in the year and a half, and time's gotten a little slower. But I still haven't figured out how it's possible that we've had 91 winter meetings, but only 81 presidents when the president's term is 1 year, and 87 years of existence. So I still haven't figured out the math. But for those of you who are at the press conference today, fear not, I will not do this speech also in Spanish. So you don't have to worry. Honored guests, fellow mayors, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to welcome all of you to the 91st winter meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We convene at a time of great consequence for our country and our communities. Over the next few days, we will listen and learn from an array of citizens, experts, activists, and fellow public servants on a wide variety of issues, from infrastructure to next generation technology. All of them are united by a shared concern and a common mission, delivering for our residents, the people of America. This has been the hallmark of our organization across every state and territory, across every region and municipality, across every background, race, creed, culture, and complexion. It's the culture that mayors build in their cities, a culture based on respect and decency, a culture driven by results and substance, not rhetoric and stunts, a culture of leadership that focuses on making a difference more than making a statement. We are expected and we are elected to get things done. One of my residents recently used a pothole to describe the problems facing our country, and more importantly, the way that we need to solve these problems. He said we need to fill the potholes of America, and he's right. We've got potholes in our country that are deep and growing. As mayors, we all know what those potholes are. All of us deal with them, and all of us are judged by our ability to fill them. America has a lot of potholes right now. These are the issues that have gridlocked America for decades. They're not necessarily difficult issues to solve if we change the way we think about solving these problems. Like balancing your budget or keeping your neighborhood safe. These are kitchen table issues that every American is grappling with today. And in order to solve these problems, Americans need leadership and they need authenticity. And that's just simply who we as mayors are. It's encoded in our DNA, in all of your DNA. That's why we're in Washington right now, to represent our constituents and lead them from the front with civility. One of our glaring potholes is our ongoing lack of action on immigration, a topic that we've been discussing a lot. We've all come from different backgrounds and have different beliefs, but I think it's clear to everyone here that the status quo is simply unacceptable. Unchecked immigration places a tremendous burden on our cities. This pressure is often driven by our hemispheric neighbors who have prioritized ideology over the well-being of their people. We need to recognize this threat and give it the importance it deserves within our foreign policy framework. Economically, we need a proactive regional strategy that nearshores our production, safeguards our economy, reduces our reliance on China, and builds on our relationships with the rest of the Americas. Balancing our budget and dealing with our debt is also another economic pothole. Every mayor knows that we don't have the luxury of an open checkbook. This is not a matter of philosophy or ideology. Every household in America has to balance their budget. Federal spending has been out of control, and it now endangers our long-term economic health. This very week, our country is facing an existential threat with the looming debt ceiling, which can shake the very foundation of the entire world economy. Both parties know it, both parties see it, and it will take both parties to fix it and rein it back. Maintaining public safety for everyone is also a pothole. No city, no state, no country can succeed without the rule of law and public safety. Every person has the right to feel safe and be safe in public spaces and in their private homes. We must support our police and our law enforcement and fund our police. It's time to put the failed defund police movement to bed. It's also time to end the no cash bail experiment. It has driven an explosion of lawlessness. It shutters critical businesses, thank you, and it can create urban food deserts. Let's get back to supporting our police officers who have the hardest job in America. No job demands more from any one person with so little pay and so much scrutiny. Our national and local infrastructure is another critical pothole. The conference was instrumental in passing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And let me thank our team at the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the mayors of both parties who worked so hard to address these needs. Let me also thank past president, my good friend and brother, Steve Benjamin, Brian Barnett, who always knows where the closest bar is, who's always aware of his surroundings, and Nan Whaley, yeah, I know I'm gonna pay for that, and Nan Whaley, thank you so much for taking on the work of building our leadership and building our membership and our local infrastructure, putting it at the forefront and center of the national debate. This week, our conference will welcome former mayor and our conference friend, Pete Buttigieg, and we will discuss with Pete the needs and challenges of national transportation and local needs. Our infrastructure serves as the veins and arteries of our economy. We cannot serve our residents without paved roads, clean buses, and efficient rails. And we cannot send our children to school without sound roads and an upgraded digital infrastructure. As we saw throughout the pandemic, without bridging the digital divide, we quickly exacerbate the economic and learning divide. Investing in our tech ecosystem is also a pothole. And I want to thank our conference for championing the American innovation economy. Many gathered here have asked why we've made technology such a focal point of this presidency. The truth is, technology from Web 3.0 and biotech to advanced manufacturing and AI holds the power to transform our economy, our politics, and our lives. In the 21st century American economy, every company will be a tech company. This is why I want to recognize Mayors Ginther, Gallego, and Kelly, among others, for taking on such a leading role in this field. And I want to applaud all of this conference, all of the members who supported the CHIPS Act. Right now, over 80% of our microchips, microcomputing power, every single phone, including that one, is produced in Taiwan. On the China-facing side of Taiwan, we used to produce 40% of all microchips. We're down to now only 10%. This very fact poses a massive threat to our economy and our national security. All of these national potholes exist because leaders in the hyper-partisan world we find ourselves in have failed to fill them. We cannot afford to wait. These potholes need to be filled, and everyone in this room knows exactly how to fill them. So let's take out our shovels, grab some asphalt, grab some tar, and get to work. Let's use this time together to listen, learn, and lean on our colleagues in Washington. Let's show them that mayors make it happen, that mayors deliver, that mayors make a difference every single day. Thank you, and God bless you for the opportunity of serving each and every one of you. In this, the greatest country on the planet, led by the greatest mayors. Thank you.
Please welcome Global Lead on Sustainability Policy for Uber Technologies, Inc., Adam Gromas.
Thank you for the kind intro. Uber is a proud sponsor of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And just like your next ride on Uber, my allotted time, the end of it is in just 3 minutes, so let's go. It's not lost on us at Uber that we serve at the pleasure of the cities that you serve as mayors. And I believe we share a common goal, that our cities must be places where people can thrive, both in vibrant economies and healthy environments that are ready to meet the climate challenge. As the head of global sustainability policy at Uber, I know that a decarbonized and multimodal transportation system is critical to getting there. That's why at Uber, we want to be part of the climate solution. Just over 2 years ago, we committed to reach 100% EVs on Uber in the US by the end of 2030, and committed $800 million to help hundreds of thousands of drivers go electric by 2025. Today, we run the world's largest zero-emission rideshare platform outside China. Active battery EVs on Uber quadrupled in the last year, and we now serve 40,000 active EV drivers on the platform who do about 6.5 million exhaust-free trips every single month in the US, Canada, and Europe. These are really encouraging numbers. It's early, but these are just numbers. The stories I love are the people behind them. So let me tell you about Shanita. She's a student studying for a degree in the transportation space, and she lives in LA, just like their new mayor, Karen Bass. She's driven on Uber since 2016 because it helps support her life as a student and helps pay the bills. And last year, when we announced a new EV partnership with Hertz, Shanita decided to try one by renting one. And she says she loves her Tesla. Not only is it good for the planet, but it's good for her wallet. It helps her make more money because she saves on gas. And we love helping her do that. In fact, we give an extra $1 per trip to Shanita and every zero-emissions car driver in the US. Shanita is joined by tens of thousands of EV drivers. We're honored to support each with stories I wish I had time for, like Kyra, a single mom living and a baker living in Philly. She saves about $300 a week on gas, she thinks, in her EV. Or Perry in Chicago. He loved the EV he rented with Hertz so much that he went out and bought one in September. Our partnership with Hertz is not just a big deal for Shanita, Kyra, and Perry. It's one of the biggest EV deals in the world. Over the last year, drivers running EVs from Hertz in 30 cities around the US and Canada did collectively over 250 million all-electric miles on Uber. 250 million miles. That's like round trips from Anchorage to Mayor Suarez's city of Miami and back in a car. So my main question for all of you is, what can we do to work together to help find more drivers like Shanita and help give them the tools they need to make the biggest difference? The research shows us that when we help high mileage drivers like rideshare drivers get into EVs, you get 4 times the emission benefits. And active drivers on our platform do about 140 trips every single month. That means there's opportunities for saving on gas, opportunities to contribute to local economies. And it means that drivers like Shanita are ambassadors for clean transportation in their cities. Here's our emails. Drop us a note. We'd love to work with you. We have data we would love to share to help you place EV charging in places where it will get most used. Let's put EVs in the hands of the people that will make the biggest difference. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Adam. I want to now turn our attention to a very important conversation for all mayors, expanding internet access. I just talked about it in my remarks, and connecting our people to opportunity. As part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is nearly $65 billion in funding available through various Internet for All programs, which is aimed to help make broadband internet access faster, more affordable, and more accessible throughout the country. Most of this money comes in the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, also known as BEAD. Accessing these dollars can be complicated. Mayors must work with their state broadband offices to develop a plan and broadband maps needed to accurately reflect the needs in our cities. Here to discuss how mayors can seize the opportunity of the Internet for All programs, please welcome Scott Woods, the Vice President for Community Engagement and Strategic Partnership at Broadband.Money. Very important panel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor Suarez, for that opening. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on, we can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. There we go. My name is Scott Woods. And first of all, again, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the staff at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Tom Cochran, David Burns running things in the back, and all of you for being here today. As Mayor Bowser talked about last night at the UAE Embassy event, did any of you get a chance to attend that wonderful event last night? Absolutely. As she stated last night, mayors are indeed the lifeblood of this country. And so I need all of you to pause just for a minute because my message is really simple and it's really clear. Mayors, you can get screwed if you don't act fast and act now. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, but I want to highlight why I'm here. My name is Scott Woods. I'm the Vice President of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships with a company called Ready.net, and we've made Broadband.money as a geospatial next-generation cloud-based platform to help local providers and local communities win their fair share of funding and to compete in the global marketplace. So let's talk about how we do this. First, we are a public benefit corporation. So if anyone wondering, what does that mean? Our corporate mission is to do good and to be there for American communities. And to do that, we've created this awesome platform that you'll see here in just a second. But I'm going to walk through this just for a second so you can see why it's so important that I have your complete and full attention, because this is some of the most interesting and information that we'll talk about right now during your time here. A litany of other issues, but your communities are impacted by broadband like never before. And let's not even mention digital equity and equality, access, and adoption. So as you know, Mayor, soon America is making its largest ever investment in broadband. And that soon means now. 56 state broadband offices representing all 50 states and 6 territories have received their initial planning funds to roll out 5-year plans on broadband access and digital equity. Each state, with the exception of a couple, we won't talk about them, accepted more than $5 million to start the planning process. This new funding can change everything for your constituents. We know that winners get abundant resources on broadband and digital equity. Losers remain unserved and left behind. But there's an underpinning of consciousness and divide between urban and rural areas. And so our fundamental question is, there's an increasing worry on how cities may be left out of this historic funding process. In excess, some believe, of $100 million when you factor in the private equity and private money, over $70 billion in federal funding that's earmarked for broadband in unserved and underserved communities, and community anchor institutions that lack the needed gigabit connectivity. In urban areas, and we know cities that you all are mayors of, telehealth, distance learning, working from home, all of these things fuel bandwidth growth. And some estimates that bandwidth grows by 50% per year. And it's estimated by the year approaching 2030, the average broadband use will be 3 to 30 gigabits per second. Now that's super technical, and what does that mean? It means that it's growing, and once you get that in, there's exponential demand that happens in your communities. Not just your communities, but your businesses. That is going to fuel economic growth for your communities and economic opportunities, not just here in America, but globally overall. So the fundamental question we're answering today, and that we're going to address, how will you get your city's fair share? Do you know? I take that as a no. What you will need is a data-driven, community-based approach to win, and you can start by visiting our site, broadband.money/mayors. We've made it really easy for you. We have cards, QR code cards at every seat here, and some chocolate, so don't spoil dessert, but if you want chocolate, go ahead. But we know these government programs look nothing like before, right? Winning strategies, applications, the filing process, the reliance on empirical data, to understand where your unserved and underserved communities are, where your community anchor institutions are that lack gigabit connectivity. These are fundamental concepts that NTIA and Congress put in the BEAD program. So my message again is clear. You will lose out unless you take swift, data-driven action. And you can start by visiting, your city's broadband audit that we've created absolutely for free for over 55,000 government units across the country. That's every state, that's every county, that's every city, that's every tribe, that's every unincorporated government entity is reflected in the broadband audit. So visit that, visit broadband.money/mayors and find out how you can begin to advocate with your state broadband office right now to ensure you're not left out of this historic funding that's taking place. The goal is really clear. Get the ground truth insights with empirical and qualitative data of what the true broadband need is in your community. So my question to you mayors, do you want to win? That doesn't sound like it. Y'all played it. Do you want to win? There we go. So let's visit broadband.money/mayors and find out how we can help you win. So let me fast forward. We're about to do a fireside chat. And fate had it that we had the only mayor that was a state broadband office director scheduled to attend. I was going to do a phenomenal interview with her. I was going to blow the socks off. And guess what? Her flight got canceled. And she's not going to be able to make it. But Mayor Jade is the mayor of city of Hutchinson, Kansas, and she's also been installed as the state broadband director for the state of Kansas. And she was going to talk to you about everything that she's learned both as a mayor and as a broadband office director. So we made a really quick change last night at the embassy. We're not doing the fireside chat with Jade. We're actually going to do it with Jace, who is the CEO of broadband.money and ready.net. And I'm going to welcome Jace Wilson to the stage so we can start our fireside chat. Please give Jace a big warm welcome.
Oh, we gotta get our selfie first.
Yeah.
Before we do that, Mayor's, thank you all for making time, and I'm sorry I'm no Jade. She's amazing, but check out her work. She's a state broadband director in Kansas. But
We're going to do this real quick.
yeah, let's do it.
All right. We're going to do a quick selfie with everyone so we can post it. Come on, real quick. This way. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Everybody smile. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
We're very sorry about that last minute mix-up, but hopefully we'll be able to help you some way.
So let's jump right into it, Jace. Can I call you Jade?
Please. Yeah.
All right. So Jace, let's jump right into it. So cities have been going crazy about this thing called fabric and the challenges. What's the fabric implications on cities, and what is our specific call to action today?
Well, mayors, can we see a show of hands real fast? How many of y'all know about the fabric challenge processes that just happened?
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so the part where the folks in your city, your constituents, and thank you everybody for everything that you're doing to help your constituents with all of the things that you're doing. The part where you are going to be able to help weigh in to make sure that your state got its fair share of this historic, America's largest and almost certainly last major broadband investment is already passed. That was Friday the 13th. So, but the good news is that you're going to be able to go forward with the knowledge that you need to be at the table,
yes,
right, and participate. And Scott, you were an executive over at the NTIA before we got to join forces, and y'all did a wonderful job of architecting BEAD to make sure that, among other things, the local folks inside of states, they have to come forward, but they get the opportunity to work with their state broadband director to make sure that they have, their part of the plan figured out, right? And the thing that we were thinking that you should really get going on is getting the comprehensive data that you're going to need in order to prove your case, right? So even though the ship has sailed for your state to get more of what it's going to get, the opportunity is now over the next couple of months to start gathering the stuff that you're going to need in order to, make sure that your city within its state, some of your states are going to get hundreds of millions and in some cases over $1 billion. And this is going to be your opportunity to make sure that you get your share of that for your constituents. So.
And what is absolutely clear, and we were scheduled to do this with Jade as a fireside chat. We're going to do this as a discussion. What is absolutely clear for those of you who understand what's in the legislation is the money is targeted, it's prioritized to unserved and underserved areas and community anchor institutions and vulnerable populations in traditionally marginalized communities, right? And so that's going to impact the amount of money and funding and support that comes directly to you and your constituents, mayors. If you're not at the table right now, interacting with the state broadband offices, as they use the money that NTIA has provided to them to develop these 5-year plans. If you're not at the table, you're not going to be in the plan, and if you're not going to be in the plan, you're not going to be funded. And so we know right now, just looking at the maps, that they're overstated, right? We're not going to hear to bash the maps, but we know that urban areas are underrepresented, but there's still a need. And so what we're going to fast forward right now, you can see a demonstration of our platform as I talk to Jace here, a couple of more questions in the brief time that we have left. So how important is it, Jace, that local mayors coordinate this process with state broadband offices, again, pivoting from fabric challenges, but moving forward to be a part of this 5-year plan that states are developing?
Yeah, I would actually throw it back to you, Scott. You helped to architect the rules around local coordination and making sure that cities have a voice in this process. But I learned something awesome every day from local leaders and mayors especially. Like, I got the chance to see Mayor Sly James. I sat on his cabinet for Google Fiber and making the most of it on the Bi-State Innovation team, and saw firsthand like how much effort that y'all have to do to just even get a basic thing done. So we appreciate that. The job here is like, we build software and tools that help you to try to do more with less. But, in this case, like on local coordination, it's really important that you, as Scott mentioned, go ahead and get started, right? But the fact that you know about it, like, there are no excuses now, right? But if the states don't hear from you, you're not going to be funded, as Scott said. But somebody from the U.S. Conference of Mayors team, and thank you, U.S. Conference of Mayors, for having us, by the way. Like, I learned something awesome from y'all every time we get together. But what was the frame of reference? It was the blueberries in the tomato soup, right? Like, if you're a sort of liberal-leaning city within a state, you are no stranger to fighting that fight to get your share of the things that are coming to you, are supposed to come to you, but don't. Just know that it was also deliberate on behalf of lots of really large-scale folks that don't necessarily want to see the broadband grant funding go to places where it could do the most good. Those are the dense places. There's a reference, there are horror stories, for example, from the fabric process where the very first version of the map, like, you're going in and looking at it, and there are entire, as the industry calls them, multi-dwelling units missing from those maps, right? And those are going to get, they're supposed to get on average median $4,000, per prospective subscriber, and they're just completely missing, right? So there's thousands of these folks that could and should be getting the broadband resources, and they're not going to, right? But it's going to be up to you to do the local coordination.
And these MDUs are apartments and condos that are prevalent in urban and dense areas.
Yeah, families needing broadband, as we like to call them.
Absolutely. And also as well, when we talk about the local coordination requirements, I want all the mayors and your staffs to know it is mandated in BEAD. So the state broadband offices actually have to report on their local coordination efforts and document how they've come to you to make sure that your needs are included in the plans that they have developed. But NTIA just didn't stop at local coordination. There's tribal coordination efforts. There's digital equity and access considerations that are included. There's supplier diversity requirements to ensure that women and minority-owned businesses are included in this process. So there's a lot to do, and your voice is needed. And so if you're not actively participating in your state broadband office, in the planning sessions, if they aren't going to come to you to be a part of that process, the message is clear. You need to advocate, you need to get moving, you need to move right now. Yeah. In our final few seconds here, Jace, I'm going to ask you to end on some closing thoughts on how important is it that local mayors and their teams really understand the local broadband data and information in their community, and what does that drive in terms of innovation?
Yeah, y'all are the problem solvers, right? Like, you're the great enablers of folks that are building, solutions for your communities and making sure that your constituents are taken care of. And you know that broadband on its own isn't going to do a damn thing, right? but it is an enabler of a great many solutions to some of the hardest problems that y'all are facing and that you're helping your constituents with. You know, that data, that information about understanding your broadband reality, which you can get through the broadband audit. You can even go later if you don't have time right now, like broadband.money/mayors. And look, there's even free broadband audit. Like, you just go and get the data. At minimum, like, you'll have that. And one last quick show of hands. How many of y'all have actually sat down and had a conversation with your state broadband director?
Just a few.
Okay.
All right.
That's that. So, you know, get going, all right? It's more than the grants. Like, I know y'all are getting flooded with all kinds of opportunities to get stuff funded from all these wonderful infrastructure grants and everything that's going on, but you know, this connectivity thing, it's really, really important, as y'all know. Like, it's not going to solve a single problem on its own, but it's going to enable a lot of really awesome solutions. So.
Yes. So, mayors, the call to action is clear. Let's get activated, let's get motivated, and please be a part so that your communities, your constituents, your homes, your residents, your businesses aren't left out of this historic federal funding that's coming for broadband and digital equity. So thank you very much. That's all the time that we have. We do have a booth out here. We have our cards here. You can look at our QR code, and my contact information is on the screen where you can contact me directly for more information. So thank you all for your time today, and thank the U.S. Conference of Mayors for this wonderful, wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Dude.
So before I introduce our next set of panelists, I wanted to provide a quick update on our climate initiatives with Wells Fargo. Where are you, Wells? You guys were clapping before. Woo, let's go. Energy, let's go. As you know, climate impacts continue to threaten communities across the nation, and public-private collaboration will be critical to prepare for future risks. The climate initiative between the conference and Wells Fargo has brought together public and private sector leaders to identify the challenges and opportunities that cities and business leaders face in reaching their climate goals. Tomorrow morning, during the climate session, we are releasing our final report with recommendations that outlines public and private sector strategies centered around investing in resilient neighborhoods. I hope you will all be able to attend. I'd also like to thank Wells Fargo for working with us on this critical issue, and to announce the USCM has entered into a new partnership with them focused on strengthening city small business and entrepreneur ecosystems. The partnership will highlight mayoral leadership that establishes, supports, and strengthens small business owners with tools, training, and access to capital to help them thrive in our cities. For our next discussion, I will be talking with Rebecca Olavarida, owner of Rock 4x4, a small business based in Doral, Florida, very near and dear to my heart, to hear firsthand how she is navigating today's economy. I'm also pleased to be joined by Wells Fargo CEO of Consumer and Small Business Banking, Mary Mack, whose team has been immensely focused on supporting small business through the pandemic and now today's continued economic headwinds, with a particular focus on helping diverse and women-owned small businesses. As we bring them to the stage, let's take a look at this video.
So if you have a Jeep or a truck and you want to modify it, something flashy because you like bigger wheels and tires, or because you want to take your Jeep overlanding, you come to us. I was born in Venezuela. I remember my mom teaching my older brother how to drive, and I didn't want to get left behind. My first car was a used Ford Mustang Cobra, and if you have a Cobra, you race it.
She started going with me on the four-wheel drive trips. She fell in love with it.
Stress-free environment that's filled with adrenaline. It's just kind of like where you let go of everything and you're just there outdoors and just having a good time.
Rocco means my initials, which is Ricardo, Olavarrieta, and then company. We had a group of enthusiasts in the area. We realized that there were very few places that we could get our vehicles worked on. And so I started basically by myself.
I graduated with a finance degree and he came up to me and said, would you like to join me? I never looked back. Because it is a male-driven industry, there's been instances where I'm not taken seriously. Gender discrimination, it's something that you can't get away from, but you can decide how you choose to approach it. You got a project for us? Yes.
Well, she's a CEO. We are all here today because of her.
People think that men and women are not equal until you actually start working with a woman in your same industry and you realize that she's even better than you. She can move boxes, install an engine. She's our boss. It's been the best decision that I think we have ever made.
One day, my future husband walked in through the doors.
My uncle sent me to buy tires. I'm like, oh, she's around my age. I thought she was really cute. It's like having a conversation with your best friend about cars, but it's your wife, so it's even better.
Some of the challenges that we've had as a business are not unique to the automotive industry. As an entrepreneur, you're working 24/7. Last night we had fraud on our account, and it's definitely nerve-wracking when you start seeing weird transactions post. And it was just a matter of walking into the branch, and 20 minutes later, the funds were reimbursed into the account. We had a new account number, and back to business. I started banking with Wells Fargo when it was Wachovia. Currently, the business has multiple products, including credit cards, lines of credit. It's a new relationship with my current banker, and I'm excited to see where that relationship takes us.
Good stuff. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you both for joining us. Let's start the discussion with you, Mary. And by the way, I have to check this place out. This looks amazing in Doral, which is very close to Miami. I don't know if the mayor of Doral, I don't think she was able to make it. She's recently elected. But it's wonderful, and I'm super excited for you and your family. Mary, as a banking leader at a major financial institution, I know you're very familiar with the needs of small business and all they have gone through over the past several years. Talk to us a bit about the important steps that Wells Fargo is making to connect with small businesses and help them in ways that really matter, some of the ways that was just mentioned.
Happy to do that, and thanks for having us, and thanks for allowing us to share Rebecca's story with you, because it's a pretty amazing one. What we realize is, sort of to your analogy on potholes, in order for us to think about all the things that need to be delivered to support small businesses, it's not just our taking care of our 3 million customers, but we also need to invest in the rest of the ecosystem, like Connect to More, which I'm sure Rebecca will talk about, is a women's entrepreneurial mentorship program through the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, or venture funds like Women Who Lead, investing in CDFIs that can leverage the money and make it go even further than we can, or investments that we've made in minority depository institutions, because we need all of that infrastructure and ecosystem to work together in a way that gives small businesses the kind of support they need across a number of different challenges.
You know, Rebecca, Mary sort of mentioned this, as a small business owner and a diverse female small business owner in a predominantly male-dominated industry of cars, I think it would be a good idea for this audience to be able to hear from you on how your business is doing now as we kick off the new year and have had several rough years to contend with due to the pandemic. What are your struggles and milestones? What are you optimistic about as we enter into a new year?
One of the biggest struggles that we faced during the pandemic was supply chain, and it wasn't exclusive to the automotive aftermarket, but it really allowed us to look in and try to figure out how do we face this. And what we did is that we focused in American-made product. So at this point, what I'm looking forward in 2023 is actually growing the presence of American-made product in our European division. We recently launched in July 2022, based out of Madrid, European Distribution Center, which will do both retail and wholesale of American-made suspension products.
Amazing.
And we're working with a factory in El Cajon, California, in Coldwater, Michigan, and in Georgia, where we'll be developing a suspension kit for the top sold pickup truck in the world, which is a Toyota Hilux. It's not sold here in the US, but we're gonna import one and develop that suspension kit. And our idea is to penetrate the Asia, Middle East, and Australian market with that. So we're very excited about that and really making sure that the product that we put out is high quality, but also accessible. There's a lot of connections of like American made means expensive. And we wanna make sure that we understand that because of the value that you're getting in the product, it's actually, an investment.
Yeah, in Spanish they say lo barato te sale caro.
Right, exactly.
Roughly translated, it means sometimes you try to save money, you end up spending more money because things that are inexpensive sometimes cost you more. Mary, you like that, huh? Lo barato te sale caro. Write it down. I have a funny story on that, but I won't tell it now. During the pandemic, Wells Fargo made an important investment in helping diverse small businesses called the Open for Business Fund, which is roughly $420 million for small business recovery efforts. Can you provide us with an update on how that money has been invested to help small businesses across the country and what kind of impact those dollars are having?
Sure, and a number of you all in here are very familiar with the Open for Business Fund. In 2020, we realized that not only did we need to distribute hundreds of thousands of PPP loans, but businesses were going to need support beyond that. So we took 100% of the fees that we were granted in round one as one of the participating financial institutions and created Open for Business. So we had hoped that by investing in CDFIs and in technical assistance and then with mayors and cities across the country that we would help 152,000 businesses was our goal.
Wow.
By 2024, as of the third quarter of last year, we were already at 178,000 businesses that had been helped, 222,000 jobs created. So it's already exceeding our expectations. We're delighted with the way the network really has responded in getting the money out there to support small businesses. And then so CDFIs, technical assistance, and then we had the last $100 million of the fund, and in 5 cities across the country, Miami, Houston, LA, Atlanta, and Charlotte, we made grants of $20 million for you all to figure out, because you know your markets better than anybody, how those funds could be best distributed to help small businesses in those markets. And I talked to several of you all today, asked for feedback around how that could work better, and Bill, the only thing I got was if you have more money, we could put to work even more money. So we're delighted the way that has been really embraced by the communities and distributed where it's needed most.
Thank you, Mary, for giving Bill Daly a shout out there. Question for you, Rebecca. We have an important audience here today that will benefit tremendously from hearing directly from you as a small business owner. Please, if you can share with us, what can we all be doing together to help you and other small businesses succeed? What do you need right now? And what can we all be doing to help you pave a pathway to success for your future?
Well, I think the needs of small business owners can be very diverse and very local to your communities. And I want to challenge all the mayors here today to create a task force within your offices to really understand and have an open door for small businesses to come in and discuss the opportunities that are not available to them, or what are the challenges for permitting, or maybe sometimes even access to clean water in certain communities. So all those things are very important to keep small businesses' doors open. In our case, me particularly, I'm based out of Miami. One of the challenges that we currently have are increasing costs of running business. The cost of living has gone up tremendously, and to be able to attract human resources becomes extremely expensive. To have access to commercial real estate at a reasonable price, even if it's rented, a lot of small businesses have to close doors because they can't afford to continue to stay open. I think this is a challenge of a growing city, but it's a challenge that needs to be realized and looked at a very close perspective, and to be able to offer solutions to small businesses, because they are the livelihood of the community. It's attractive for cities to bring in the bigger companies. But remember, small businesses are your constituents. Their employees are just as important to you as they are to them, and you don't want them having to move out of state because they can't afford to live in their cities anymore.
That's a huge issue that many American cities are grappling with. So my Lo Barato Te Sale Caro story, since we have a few minutes to burn, is just to give you an example of what it means. We bought a house sorry, Wells, you didn't do the loan, but it's okay. Still love you. You probably did the prior one in my other house. So we bought a house, and basically, after spending all the money we did to make it look nice and all that, 4 years later, 4 years go by, right? And we finally have enough money to hire a decorator. So we hire a decorator, and we have a table outside, and we put these chairs outside, right? And so my Barato Te Sale Caro story is that my father-in-law was kind of a heavy-set guy, right? Goes to sit on one of these chairs, and the chair went like this. So you got to buy an expensive chair, right? If you're going to have a father-in-law sit on the chair. Got to be able to support his weight. So don't spend any money. Don't save money just to save a couple bucks, because you're going to get in trouble with your wife when your father-in-law can't sit on the chair. Okay? But what I loved, there's so many things about what you said that I loved. Mostly the fact that they're from Doral, but she said they're from Miami. So I'm sure the mayor of Houston understands this. There's probably a bunch of little municipalities around Houston, but everybody says we're from Houston. And so there's sort of a regional, and Miami is sort of an idea and a feel. And I totally agree with you that having a small business is challenging in times where where costs are going up, where labor costs are going up, where rent costs are going up. And so certainly I think we all have to work together as a country and as a coalition of mayors, along with the private sector, to help with those very pressing issues. So thank you both for being here. Thank you all for this discussion, Rebecca and Mary. We'd like to thank, of course, Wells Fargo and everyone for their support of the conference, and we look forward to the continued partnership with you as we both strive to support small businesses growing in our cities throughout the country. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the next panel, which I'll proudly join, not moderate, thankfully. No more bad father-in-law jokes. The formation of the U.S. Latino Alliance of Mayors was announced in June of 2016. The Latino Alliance is a forum for mayors to address policy concerns, governmental participation, and the changing demographics of Latino communities across America. Serving as a Latino president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I share this pride. I want to applaud the U.S. Conference of Mayors for including and recognizing Latino and Hispanic communities. Our current chairwoman, Tucson Mayor Regina Romero, was elected in November of 2019, becoming the first Latina mayor of Tucson and the only Latina mayor in the 50 largest cities in the U.S. Raised by immigrant farm workers in Somerton, Arizona, Regina broke barriers early on as the first member of her family to vote and the first to graduate from college. Prior to being elected mayor, Regina Romero served as Ward 1 City Council member from 2007 to 2019. Mayor Romero is committed to creating a Tucson that is a sustainable, thriving desert city of the future. Bienvenida, Alcaldesa Romero. I'd also like to introduce Clarissa Martinez de Castro, who serves as Vice President of the Latino Vote Initiative at Unidos US. She leads efforts to elevate year-round voter empowerment. And last but not least, our panel facilitator is Sylvia Foster Frau, award-winning journalist, the national reporter for the Washington Post, where she writes about how the country is changing racially, ethnically, and culturally. She is Vice President of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, DC Chapter Board. Please join me in welcoming our panel.
Gracias. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here. We have a really exciting discussion coming up about Latino voters, how they're performing in the country, what folks need, and all of that. And so I wanted to start off first by asking y'all a little bit. Latinos make up nearly 1/5 of the country's population, right? But we're not always seeing that in terms of voter turnout. So I wanted to throw it to all of you and ask, like, what can be done? What issues need to be brought up to help get Latinos more civically engaged and really help with that voter turnout?
I can start.
Go ahead,
Mayor,
Mayor. Please, I'll go last.
I come from Tucson, Arizona, and long line of community activists. In my parents, they're farm working parents, but early on joined the United Farm Workers Union as farm workers with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And so they instilled in me the value of participating in my community. What we do in Tucson is knock on doors. It's old-fashioned, but the most effective way of engaging Latinos in Tucson and Arizona, and most recently we saw statewide races that had as little as 218 votes separating statewide candidates. So that knocking on doors and talking to people has always proved to be valuable. When I ran on a three-way primary in Tucson in 2019, my focus was knocking on doors. In a three-way primary, I won 52% of the vote. And so it just works talking to people, asking them what they care and value, and that telling them that their vote is very important.
I agree with the mayor, and I think as mayors, you all know about campaigning. So that means one of the three key elements, I feel, that apply not only to Hispanic voters, but frankly, to any voter whose vote you would want. And that is that candidates matter, their positions matter, and meaningful outreach is essential. Since we are now heading into a presidential year, I'll share some statistics that often are not very widely known about Latinos. In presidential years, more than 80% of Latinos who are registered to vote, vote. It was 83% in the last cycle. Most people assume Latinos don't vote. What we do have is a voter registration opportunity gap. So in 2020, we had 16.5 million Latino citizens vote in that election. It was a record number compared to the previous presidential. And yet the potential is so much greater. We had 11.9 million Hispanic citizens eligible but in need of registration. So we are growing at record numbers, and the potential is even greater. Consider that every year we're adding 1 million Latino citizens who are turning 18 and will be in need of registration. But remember that in presidential years, the opportunity gap is in voter registration because more than 80% vote. In midterms, we need to make sure that people understand the recurrence of elections, something everybody faces, and also the need to vote down ballot because, as makes sense, given all the attention on the presidential election, that's the one people think about. So closing the voter registration gap is key. I would say that removing obstacles that make it hard for working class people, working families to get to the polls, that means early voting registration periods, voting by mail education. One trend we are seeing that for Latinos, who the majority tend to vote more traditionally on election day, in 2022, about 1/3 of Hispanic voters reported they were gonna vote by mail, 1/3 early, and 1/3 on election day. So going back to that outreach and the importance of it, candidates who often neglect to reach out or wait until the very last minute are already missing out on at least 2/3 of that electorate.
I think those are amazing statistics and a great perspective. I think the only little that I would add to the conversation is I think Hispanics and Latinos are now not being treated as a monolithic block, right? They're very nuanced. They have different cultures. They come from different parts of the world. They have things in common, of course, but they also have differences. And I think that uniqueness is now being reflected, hopefully in the way that advocacy and persuasion is being used to convince them to vote. I think the second part that I find personally positive is that it seems like on the Latino vote and Hispanic vote, and we could debate this, but it seems like the sort of difference in parties is narrowing, or that they're kind of converging closer to each other. And I actually think that's really good. I think that empowers the Hispanic and Latino community, number one, because it means that they're not beholden to one party or the other. And I think it also could help, and I hope it helps, with debates like immigration, right? When you think about immigration, I think there has been, a fear. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial for a long time, by certain parties, that if certain immigrants are legalized, then that could be hurtful politically. And I think if you demystify that, it could be an unlock to an issue that we all have been talking a lot about, that we think is critical to the future of our country and our viability, and one that I think, if solved, could create a tremendous amount of prosperity and peace in our country, which we desperately need.
Yeah, so let's get into some of that nuance that you're referencing. I feel like after the 2020 election in particular, there was a really strong narrative about the political way that Latinos were moving, right? That they were moving more to the right. But then after this last election, it was a little less clear. So I'm wondering, particularly for you guys, the mayors too, and then Clarissa, with your kind of overview, like, what are you seeing are the political trends in your Latino communities?
Well, Tucson, I like to call Tucson the Berkeley of Arizona, because we are super blue, super blue. I call it the blue ink in a red purplish state. We add the purple to the state. In Tucson in southern Arizona, I think it's about talking to Latinos. As the mayor said, we are not a monolith. But polls show, and I think Clarissa can share a little bit more with us, that we care about very similar issues as any other demographic in this country. This past election, we voted on the concerns regarding inflation. We voted on abortion issues. Specifically, Latinas really carry the day when it comes to access to reproductive health care in this country. And there is an opportunity for both parties to talk to us, to convince us why it's important for us to vote, number one, and two, vote for their platform. So what I usually talk to statewide candidates about, of my own party, of course, I tell them, look, don't wait until the last minute to talk to Latinos. We need to be engaged, and it takes years of engagement. In my case, back in 2010, Arizona was in the headlines because of SB 1070, an anti-immigrant policy passed by the governor at that time. And it really activated people like me, who had been recently elected, or other friends that I went to college with that marched and rallied and got themselves to work. And organizations like Unidos US, Mi Familia Vota, we created our own Latino serving organization so that we could register people to vote, educate them about the issues, and then bring them back to vote. That takes time, and it takes money in order to keep people engaged.
I would just say for Hispanic voters in Miami, which have a tendency at times to be conservative, right? I think this phenomenon that you described is, again, positive, right? You were saying how it seemed like the trend was going in one direction, that in the midterm it was a little bit unclear, right? And I think that means that there's a competition for ideas. I think it matters who the messenger is. I think it matters what they say. And I actually think it matters what language they say it in, too. Right, because even though we are not monolithic, I do think there is a connection, there's a common bond through our language, right? And so having someone who of Latino origin or Hispanic origin who maybe can communicate with that population in Spanish natively I think it's powerful. I'm not so sure that it's actually happened at the national level just yet, but it'll be interesting to see if and when it does, how that influences this very powerful voting bloc that I think has the possibility of being unified, although again, what you've described as a phenomenon actually means you can't take that unification for granted, right? It's not a for sure thing, right? You got to work for it, you have to work hard for it, and that's probably the way it should be.
Yeah, and I'll just keep saying, right? You have put into words this pithy advice, which is candidates matter, their positions matter. You cannot skip the outreach, though, right? And I think that I completely agree with the mayor that I think, as a civil rights organization that advocates for a stronger America by ensuring that the obstacles are removed for the Latino community and they can contribute fully, we agree that when you have any and all parties competing for your vote, that's where you want to be. And I think that's the case for all voters, not just Hispanic voters. In terms of what we see trend-wise, right? Every election cycle, we see a number of misconceptions and mischaracterizations about Hispanic voters get recycled and recirculated. 2022 was not the exception, and I'm sure we'll see them again in 2024, right? And there are new ones. So the new one in 2022 was there is a massive shift among Latinos to the Republican Party. The data just doesn't bear that out. What it does bear out, though, is something that conforms with historical patterns. The historical patterns among Hispanic voters have been that about 2/3 have tended to support Democrats, about 1/3 have tended to support Republicans. This is overall, it kind of holds in most states with some notable differences, particularly in Florida. But Republicans had lost some ground, particularly in the last decade, which they are regaining. So in some ways, and again, with some notable exceptions, particularly with Governor DeSantis' success in Florida, and we can talk about why, you are seeing a return to the mean. So Republicans regaining that third. But what that speaks to is also that has been historically true. And that is that there is a swing element among the Latino vote. And that is because we are a very young population. We are an evolving electorate, right? The average age for Hispanics is 27 compared to 35 plus for the general population. So we're constantly adding voters that are learning about the process and learning about candidates. And for many in our community, the hyper-partisan lines have not metastasized, which I see as an opportunity, particularly for anybody interested in governing. So I think in this last election, I would say Latino voters were sending a wake-up call to both parties. With Republicans over the last decade, you could say that they have been their own worst enemy and Democrats' best friend when it comes to courting the Latino vote, based on some positions that people have seen them as embracing that have tended to antagonize some folks. And then where it comes to Democrats, I think they kind of been phoning it in, right? So while they picked up on some of the support that Republicans lost, they didn't solidify it to their column, and you are seeing some of that churn right now. So for Democrats, one piece of advice would be that there is a very critical need to connect effectively on economic issues. The economy consistently, particularly jobs, and how that affects the cost of living, for the last couple of decades is the top priority for Hispanics. And then to be able to really not phone it in, make sure people know about what you stand for, because most Hispanics, when asked, see a lot of their values aligned with what tend to be Democratic positions. On the Republican side, I think we have seen that this playbook of meaningful outreach and engagement pays off, and Governor DeSantis has definitely been on a permanent campaign for the last 4 years. But I think the warning there is that in order to solidify that support that's come back and to expand it, Republicans need to mind that there are some issues on which the Latino community sees them radically out of step with where the community is, right? And that includes wanting to see elected officials speak up against nationalism and white supremacy. It includes putting solutions on the table on immigration. It includes advancing reasonable gun legislation. And it means that on abortion, while Latinos may not see themselves as pro-choice, more than 70% agree that it should not be illegal and that choice should not be taken away from everybody else.
So we have 1 minute left, and so I wanted to ask y'all any last minute kind of lessons learned or advice to some of these mayors here, especially those who maybe are just having burgeoning Latino populations and communities, right, who are trying to connect. Any last words?
Mayor.
I would just say, talking a little bit about the Florida example is, understanding every community's nuance. Yes. And I actually think, frankly, the reason why Hispanics in Florida in 2022, I think it was a trend that started actually in 2016. So if you look at Miami-Dade County as an example, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 30 points in Miami-Dade County, okay? Biden beat Donald Trump by 8 points in 2020, right? This is 16 to 20. And then Senator Rubio and Governor DeSantis won by 10 and 12 points respectively, right? So that is a 40-point swing, 42-point swing. How does that happen? Because that's massive, right? That's an enormous swing. It has a lot to do with Cuba and Venezuela policy, because there is a high percentage of new arrival Cubans and also Venezuelans who voted in a very, very large percentage, 75% or more for Republicans. So I do think understanding, so I guess my takeaway or my advice is understanding the issues that your community cares about deeply and is impacted by, and understand them well, because that's what they're going to want to hear from you about what you're going to do about that, what you support and what you don't support.
Mm-hmm. And for me, as the chair of the Latino Alliance of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, my goal is to present this type of information to all the mayors that are Latino or Latino curious, or have huge or have just huge populations and growing populations of Latinos in your cities, because there is a lot of polling, there is a lot of information that can help you engage Latinos in your cities. And that's why I was so excited about having Clarissa here, because Latinos US does that polling for us. I know that in our app, of the U.S. Conference of Mayors app, we have the polling that has been done by Latinos US, and I want to make sure that along with Mayor Suarez and the team at the U.S. Conference of Mayors on behalf of the Latino Alliance, that we are of service to mayors that have growing Latino populations in their cities. So for me, it's about being informed as mayors, making sure that you have the correct information, and never forget that engaging the Latino population, because they might have different needs in Miami that they do in Tucson, Arizona. And so being able to engage and always engage and keep engaging, like Governor DeSantis has for the last 4 years, your Latino populations is equally important.
As the mayor said, we have a wealth of polling data, and we are happy to share it with anybody and everybody. I would say don't get stumped. Yes, there are a lot of nuances to the Hispanic electorate, but there's also a great deal of affinity in what the community supports, believes, and wants to see, regardless of region of the country, subgroup, age, and gender. Right. There's a lot of affinity and commonality there, not only within the Latino community, but with fellow American voters that actually want to see solutions and effective governing, which frankly is an area where mayors are the leaders. So I would say don't overcomplicate things, but there is data to inform that approach. And also, I would say that one of the advantages in engaging Latino voters is that, as I like to say, generally speaking, Hispanic voters are ni muy muy ni tan tan. right? We're not too much on this side or too much on the other. I think that you have a pragmatic community that believes in hard work, in country, in family, and faith. We also believe generally, and as an overall, whether conservative or progressive, that government has an important role to play in ensuring that people have access to opportunity, and also that people need to work hard to make that opportunity real. So I believe that the engagement of the Latino community can be a great partner in governing effectively again. And thank you so much on behalf of Unidos. Welcome. We are headquartered here and actually across the street. So welcome to DC, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you.
Yes, thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Where are you from?
Where am I from?
Yeah.
Illinois.
Okay, so the accent. Pick it up. Gracias.
Thank you, muchas gracias.
Mucho gusto. All right. So picking up on some of the themes I raised earlier in this lunch, our next speaker illustrates how the conference fosters broad bipartisan relationships. We may come from different parts of the country and from very different cities. We may be members of different political parties, but we all share a common commitment to serving our residents, protecting our people, and advancing a future better than our past. We know that for a city to be strong, our cities must be safe. We know that for a city to thrive, we must welcome entrepreneurs by leaning into technology. And most importantly, we all wake up every day working to build a better future for generations to come. Our next speaker embodies our commitment to innovation, bipartisanship, and a shared prosperity for all cities. In fact, his predecessor was recently ranked Miami's #1 real estate agent. Welcome the 110th mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. Come give you a hug.
Thank you, Mayor Suarez, and we're going to steal back some of the folks who moved to Miami. And really thank you to the Conference of Mayors, my fellow mayors. The first year in office, you have given me so much support across the city. A year ago, I came before you to lay out an urban agenda and urge mayors to lead. Today, I am here to thank you for the leadership and to ask your support as we move forward in this national call to action on 3 of the most serious issues facing us as a nation: gun violence, the fentanyl epidemic, and the asylum seeker crisis. These are issues that need a 50-state strategy, the leadership of our government, and economic power of a united nation. The border crisis reminds us of this reality every day. Just a few days ago, I was in El Paso to see for myself how the asylum seeker crisis is affecting our border states and our entire nation. What I saw was not a state problem or a city problem. It is a national problem, driven by global forces impacting regular people. Every attempt to deal with this immigration on a national level through legislation has been sabotaged, mostly by right-wing oppositions, and cities are bearing the brunt of this failure. Which is why I ask all of you here today to join me and say, we must come together as Americans to solve an American problem. A true solution to this problem is going to come from the executive branch and from bipartisan effort in our Senate and House. I want to thank New York City Congressional Delegation, United States Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries for their leadership and for providing New York and other localities with federal funding to help cover a portion of these expenses. I also want and like to thank Biden-Harris administration for supporting policies that would assist localities on the front lines of the asylum seeker crisis, gripping our nation. They have put forward a bold vision on immigration reform and requested billions of additional funding from Congress. But we are in need of more help now. Today, I'm calling for a national response to the asylum seeker crisis, which includes 6 main points. 1, a dedicated point person whose sole focus is overseeing and coordinating on national asylum seeker response. 2, a decompression strategy at the border that establishes a plan for each migrant's arrival and creates a system to fairly distribute newcomers regionally. 3, congressional funding for the Federal Emergency Management Agency to implement that strategy in the places of greatest need. Engines that power this nation, and those engines must keep moving. And if they kept in good working order for our nation would prosper. Our cities and mayors have gotten us this far. Now it's time for our entire government to support the work that we save so many lives we can save. Protect the American dream from generations to come and show the might of our nation if that nation is united. I thank you for the job you do every day. Thank you very much.
Smooth, man, smooth. It's my brother from another mother. Thank you so much, Mayor Adams, for being with us today. It's an honor to introduce our next speaker, the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. Secretary Granholm is leading DOE's work to advance the cutting-edge clean energy technologies. Secretary Granholm is also overseeing DOE's core missions of promoting American leadership in scientific discovery, maintaining the nuclear deterrent, and reducing nuclear danger, and remediating the environmental harms caused by legacy defense programs. Please join me in welcoming Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
Thank you so much, Mayor Suarez. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your leadership, by the way, and for your incredible willingness to really dive in and lean in on clean energy. And hello, everybody. Great to be here with all of you. As a former governor of Michigan, I totally get what it takes to make progress on the ground. Is that from Michigan? Are you clapping over there? I appreciate that. You know, on climate, you've been at this for years. After obviously watching your streets flood and your neighborhoods burn from intensifying storms and fires, you stayed committed to Paris, the Paris Agreement. You self-organized to share best practices and make sure that climate action accelerated in the United States, no matter what was going on in Washington. You have taken steps to run your cities and your towns on clean energy. You've pioneered local solutions, and President Biden is watching. Over the past 2 years, this administration's worked hard to follow in your footsteps. I'm really proud to say that the federal government has arrived to the climate fight, and we've got ammunition. As you know, we have passed the most ambitious climate and clean energy laws in United States history. I call the bipartisan, this is how I refer to it, the bipartisan infrastructure law is really sort of the backbone of the president's strategy because it really invests in the frame, the scaffolding of our nation's clean energy infrastructure, including our electric grid and next generation technologies like clean hydrogen or long duration storage or carbon dioxide removal. Some of you are really familiar with those. These technologies are all going to be located in large scale demonstrations in communities across the country. Many of your cities are already involved in these applications. So that's the first bill, the backbone. The second is the chips and science, which is, of course, the brain, which strengthens our competitiveness by boosting domestic semiconductor manufacturing and driving innovation. And those are going to be factories all across the country, too, and some of you have experienced that. And then the third is the Inflation Reduction Act, which really is the lungs of the strategy because it breathes life into the clean energy economy through what I think are irresistible financial incentives for families and for businesses to adopt clean energy technologies and save money. So altogether, these three laws form really a modern industrial strategy because they're going to create millions of jobs and they're going to bring supply chains home. They're going to give American families more breathing room. They're going to give our planet a fighting chance. So we can already see it. This is happening. I like to say this is really happening because in the last quarter of 2022, just the last quarter of 2022, the private sector announced $40 billion in new clean energy manufacturing investments, which is about as much as we saw in all of 2021. There is huge momentum here. Factories being built for supply chains for batteries, for electric vehicles. There have been 70 announcements of factories for batteries for electric vehicles since the president took office, over $91 billion worth of investment. So the bottom line is this means good paying jobs for your residents, but it means energy security here at home, and obviously it means economic growth powered by these industries. So I don't just come to talk about this. This isn't just incentivizing the private sector. I'm coming bearing gifts. So embedded in these new laws are resources directly for you to help bring the opportunity of clean energy home to your communities. So a lot of these are through resources coming out of the Department of Energy that was assigned through these laws. One of them I know you're aware of is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. You know it well. You helped to make sure this was in the bill, funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So the ECBG program is going to invest $430 million in clean energy and energy efficiency products throughout state and local and tribal governments across the country. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the U.S. Conference of Mayors for everything that you have been doing to advocate for this program, to educate local governments about it. And I'm pleased to announce that you can actually start applying today for the formula grant funds. Yes, apply, get it home. For those of you who haven't been focused on it, I hope you'll get on our website, energy.gov/BIL for Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to figure out, if you're eligible to attend. We have some upcoming webinars for more information. An important part of the application is an energy efficiency and conservation strategy that asks you to lay out your visions and your goals. We want to see if you have big, hairy, audacious goals, how y'all are thinking big, and you can apply today if you're ready, but you've got time if you need it, because the deadline isn't until a year from now, actually. But we want to help you get through the application process. So the best thing about ECBG Energy is what you've been telling us, which is its flexibility. Maybe you want to use these funds to develop a clean energy strategy with measurable goals. I'm all about measurements. Maybe you want to conduct energy audits. Maybe you want to make streetlights more efficient. Maybe you want to install renewable energy on government buildings. Maybe you want to fund a community solar campaign. Your call. This program is built around the principle that communities know what works best for them, so they should be in the driver's seat on the road to our clean energy future. Because what works obviously in Wichita might not work in Walla Walla, and Tallahassee might want something different than Toledo. And that means our role here at the Department of Energy is really to add resources, to provide tools, and to offer help in helping you achieve your goals. The principle is at the heart of we've got this tremendous emphasis now on place-based initiatives at DOE from our work with communities that are experiencing economic impacts from the energy transition to our investments in tribal energy independence and resilience. So that's EECBG. In addition to that, I'm excited to share 3 more place-based opportunities from DOE. The first one is the up to $50 million Buildings Upgrade Prize, or Buildings Up. And that is for energy efficient and energy efficiency and electrification upgrades in existing buildings. If you're interested, it is a multi-phase competition. We're asking teams of state and local governments and community organizations and tribes and utilities, building owners. We want them to start developing concept plans to decarbonize existing buildings. We're especially encouraging under-resourced teams and first-time applicants for DOE funding to apply. We've got an application support prize for help if you need it. And this is the competition's first phase. And in this first phase, teams are going to receive expert technical assistance from DOE to bring their ideas to life, and up to 60 teams in the first phase will receive up to $400,000 in cash. That's phase one. If you're interested, you can get in touch with Holly Carr, C-A-R-R, at our Building Technologies office in the Department of Energy. So that's EECBG. The third new opportunity comes through our Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. And they have launched the Energizing Rural Communities Prize, and that's to bring energy to rural and remote communities across the nation. It's made possible, again, by the bipartisan infrastructure law. It recognizes that nearly 50 million Americans live in places where energy costs are way too high and where service is often unreliable. So teams in that prize will focus either on connecting those communities to government opportunities and a network of partners across to access funding for clean energy projects. That's got a $10 million cash prize pool, or innovative financing models to access new capital, and that's got a $5 million pool. So that's the second of the, or the third of the, whatever it is. All right. I think I'm doing 4 and then an ask for help. So that would be my third. All right. If you're interested in that, start thinking about who you want to work with and maybe get ready to apply. That's going to be in February. Okay. The fourth new opportunity from DOE focuses on, this is super important, creating a technical roadmap for your city if you want it. If you want to achieve 100% clean energy, we did this with LA 100. We're launching today the Clean Energy to Communities program, or C2C. It builds off the success of this LA 100 study, which used the National Renewable Energy Lab. Of course, DOE's got 17 national labs. NREL is one of them. They worked with LA to map out the technical strategy for LA to reach 100% clean electricity by 2045. And they're ready to do that now. They've created the tool to be able to do it. Every city is different, right? So we want to be able to do the same for your city if you're interested in that. C2C, that's going to connect hundreds of communities with all types of technical experts from our national labs and our advanced modeling capacities to chart, to test different pathways to go clean. And for that, you can learn more at nrel.gov/C2C, nrel.gov/C2C. So hope you'll take advantage of these opportunities. And I have now an ask. We humbly ask for your help and your feedback. And I know a lot of you are hearing about this. We're in the middle of implementing, right, the most significant climate and clean energy legislation in history. We want to get these funds out the door as quickly as we can, but we need to get it right, which means we need to hear your ideas. And this is particular to the Inflation Reduction Act's home energy rebate and building code programs, right? All of the stuff you've been hearing about rebates, we need to get it right. It's a $9 billion initiative. It's intended to help families obviously install energy efficient and electric technology in their homes, like heat pumps, induction stoves, save them hundreds of dollars a year, maybe even hundreds of dollars a month. So even though this funding itself is going to go through states and tribes, you're going to be where the rubber meets the road. If you want to start an initiative to get heat pumps in people's homes, it's the cities that are going to make that happen. You're the ones closest to your residents. So I hope that by March 3rd, you accept the invitation to tell us what you think is needed to get it right. And that, I hope you'll use our office. We have a new Office of State and Community Energy Programs, SCEP. Love the acronyms, right, all through the federal government. It's true at the state and local level, too. But SCEP, State and Community Energy Programs, and our Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, that's the door to get into sharing your feedback on all of DOE's programs and how to access them. We are here for you. And we know that we are not going to maximize the impact of these laws for climate, for jobs, for justice, unless you take full advantage of them. So we know our clean energy future is going to be built in America's cities and America's towns by American workers and led by American mayors. We are so grateful for everything that you've already done, and together I know that we'll make sure that our clean energy future makes lives better for all of your residents, and that it comes sooner than we all imagined. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Secretary Granholm. We very much look forward to working closely with your department. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for participating in today's lunch and all of you who joined in to listen to these conversations. There are going to be some amazing sessions later on throughout the week, so be sure to come back. Again, thank you all for coming. This session is adjourned.